Good morning, Two Brain Radio. We have a very special episode for you today. We are coming in live from Dallas, Texas, at the Tinker Meetup. And I have in front of me a legend, if you will, one of the first men of the CrossFit.com forum and the former owner of CrossFit Steel Creek and the current owner of Live Active Charlotte, which happened to be the same building. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we won't. And he happens to be the owner of that building now, which is why I want to talk with him and get into the nitty-gritty of purchasing that, because from what I understand, that's a multi-million-dollar purchase. So congratulations on all your new debt. Looking forward to hearing about that. It is none other than Brian Strump. How are you doing?
Awesome. No, I'm excited to be here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So yeah, I know you from the early days. So I started doing it in 2009, 2010, and then I opened up my first affiliate in 2013. And I remember the only way to get business information at the time was to just kind of Google in the CrossFit forum.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I think you were like probably one of the most active people on there. And I think to this day, you're still one of the most active people on the Facebook group. So what type of mental disease do you have that makes you want to just argue with people on the internet for decades?
I feel like I should have been a lawyer. You know, I feel like I would have been a pretty good lawyer given that background of introduction. But, you know, back in 2008 when I was deciding to open the gym, I went around to a bunch of different gyms and somebody told me like, hey, there's this message board that you should go on. And they were naming like Andy Petronek, Skip Chase, and Doug Chapman were like the three that I specifically remember. Like, and I had, yellow lawyer pads filled with notes, as you would imagine, and of like how to potentially operate something circa 2009. And then
it was like make boxes, make rings,
and
open gym.
And then since then, I guess it always just stayed. I just felt like I tried to be a voice of reason, as nice as I could do it. Some people may have found it abrasive, but I'd hope that most people found it helpful. And then I think I try to do the same now, like a little bit of sarcasm, but I realize some sarcasm's pretty difficult to read online, so I just try to stick to the point and answer the question.
And you are a doctor. You're just not a juris doctor. You're
you're chiropractor.
Yes. You went the other route.
Yes, I went the other route. Yes.
That seems somewhat helpful, I guess. So you were one of the OGs. You were like the $500 affiliate, right?
I think I just missed it. I think we actually paid to be an affiliate in October 2009, and I was paying $2,000 up until a couple weeks ago.
Oh, you were $2,000. Huh?
Yeah, I think I was maybe one of the first. I may have been one of the first 2000ers. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You got
just missed it.
The end of the price increase.
Yeah.
And sounds like you're no longer affiliated. When did you drop the affiliation?
I still am affiliated in 2000. The way the name changed, which is still confusing. In the very first time when we were thinking about, a couple of times we were looking at purchasing something, and in 2018 or 19, I was like, this is going to be it. We'll get a new building, buy something new, put that Live Active Charlotte name, and maybe still do home of CrossFit Steel Creek or something. It didn't work out, but I already went down the rabbit hole of kind of changing everything. And this was pre-COVID, pre-Greg Glassman tweets, Black Box on Facebook, everything. So I was like, I wonder what I'm supposed to do now. So we just kept it, and I was like, eventually, maybe I'll drop it. And I'll buy a building and we'll do this. And then now I bought my space. And now it's like, we're just all in the same thing. We have an affiliate. We still are an affiliate. There was never a time that we didn't de-affiliate over 2020. So it's, like I said, it's a little bit confusing. If you type in CrossFit Steel Creek, you'll find us. New people would refer to us as probably Live Active Charlotte. But like my Steel Creek area, they'll see bumper stickers on cars from a decade ago that say CrossFit Steel Creek.
Oh, so you're still in it.
Yeah,
You're
still,
okay. So you're probably one of the oldest standing now.
So probably now,
I would guess you're definitely in the top 100. If not.
Yeah, I think over 2020 we kind of moved up a.
I know Harry
chunk.
at Black Box told us he's the oldest. He's the number.
I'm definitely not. Yeah.
He's the number one, and I don't remember when they started, but it was around that time, maybe a couple of years, maybe a year before you guys.
So maybe there's two more in Charlotte, CrossFit Charlotte and Ultimate CrossFit that were affiliates in 2007. So like they're still around. CrossFit Wilmington was one that I went to. CrossFit Cleveland. So I know there's
the namesake. If it's a city, that's
right.
Good chance it's ahead of you.
So I'm still there.
So let's talk about. So you run your business. How would it differ from the average CrossFit gym if you walked in, so people can have that context before we get into the.
So like
the
from
real
the
estate
space
piece.
perspective, probably right. We occupy 11,775 square feet. It's in like a light industrial space. The front's a doctor's office. I've been a chiropractor since 2003. So the front's a doctor's office, about like 1,800 square feet. Myself, another chiropractor, and an assistant, and then the back is like the rest of that 10,000 square feet of the building. Most people for the gym would kind of enter around the back. Most people for the doctor's office would enter in the front. And I think from like outside looking in, the size and maybe just like the amount of equipment and stuff like that is like the first thing when people come in, like, oh, this is larger than something, or this is more well equipped than something. But I don't, and then obviously a lot of differences. I mean, on like the inner workings, I would imagine that from mistakes that we've learned over the last 13, 14 years is different.
And what do you mean? Primarily, I'm looking more ops model.
Yeah.
Okay. For 12,000 square feet, but you walk in, it's just going to look like a large.
It just looks like
CrossFit
a gym. So from an operations model, like I work on doing some sales and creating content, like written content. I prefer to write. I'm very rarely like in front of a camera like this because I don't love it. And then I have a couple of key staff that either work on using Kilo and GLM to kind of run that. So I think like our strongest points is our follow-up and continuing to kind of touch base with leads and follow with people that cancel and keeping track with the current people that are in the gym from like a culture caring about standpoint, which I think that we do remarkably well. Like I think one of the biggest things that I look at when a new member comes in is how long they've been in our like sphere of system, or like how long ago did they like click to get more information. And some of those I enjoy seeing it's like 7, 8, 2 years, and they maybe respond to an email, or they just have been still thinking about us for something. It makes me feel like the work of the emails that I write are valuable, and I think like that's where a lot of people like miss the boat from like the follow-up perspective. So I think like we do that really, really well. So I think like from an operations perspective, like that and the sales funnel, not so much like paid Facebook funnel stuff, but just like once they come into our system, I think we do a good job.
Yeah, we do origin tracking for everybody who comes into Two Brain, and they tend to fall into 1 to 2 camps. It's like they saw it, they fell into the funnel, they bought in the first 90 days that they interacted with us, or they've been in there for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And there's like no middle ground. And that long tail, there's a lot of value in just kind of hitting those people over and over and over again. So if you've been consistent with the writing and consistent with the follow-up, that makes a pretty meaningful difference over a long period of time.
Yeah, and when those people come in, it's just like if you click the link, logged in, and you 3 days ago you booked your appointment, I've got like some ammo in a sales conversation. But like if you've been in our thing for 2 years, like there's very little chance that you're leaving and not getting started.
Right, because you've just been consuming.
Yeah, like what else are you waiting for?
You know it. Yeah. You pulled the trigger. So you talked about your you're a writer, you're a content creator. You got somebody who manages your pipeline, so the follow-up is pretty good. In terms of other staff, what do you have in order to run the ship?
I've got me and my admin or assistant's been with me for 7 years. Kristen, who kind of like takes care of everything. She's kind of like my filter, so to speak, of like messaging coming in that allows me to have a little bit of freedom to like create and take care of bigger problems. And then we've got 2 other coaches that run the nutrition program, which we sell a lot of that in terms of nutrition. And then maybe like 9 other coaches. I think like 4 or 5, let's call them like full time, full focus. This is their only job, their only source of income. And then a couple that maybe coach anywhere from 20 to 25 hours a month to like 4 or 6. So some of the ones that are coaching 4 and 6 have been with us for a decade plus now, and maybe they've kind of moved up and have another job, and they're just still want to be a part of just coaching every now and then.
So you, Kristen, 5 coaches, and then are the nutrition people full-time, full income from the gym?
Yeah, those 2, yeah.
So you do about 7 people. You got 7 careers in fitness you're responsible for.
Yeah, I say that's fair.
Okay. And what does membership and top line look like to support all that?
Probably like averaging a little bit over, between 52 and 57,000. So what's that, like 650 for the year? Is that what you meant? 650,000.
Oh, you're trying to multiply the 50 by 52 over by 12. Yeah. We don't do math before 10 a.m. on the show. Don't worry. So, you just do the monthly number.
Yeah. So I would say between like it's been a while since we've been under 50.
Yeah.
So and I feel like that's a good spot. I'd like to at this point now I want it to grow so I can continue to like get staff to get what they need. Like I'll get a little bit more, but like I want to be able to like create a bigger pie for everybody,
And Charlotte's pretty low cost of living, right? So I had Dan on here yesterday, and I think
Dan
Purrington.
Okay,
he's in Portland, which I think you need like $100,000 a year to just survive in Portland.
Yeah.
Can you live on like a $30,000 a year salary in Charlotte?
I don't think you could live on a $30,000 a year salary. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's being done, but I would say probably like that, that 55 to 60 would be my guess that you could probably, live and be somewhat frugal and not be spending on the finest things and, take a vacation and do some stuff, but there is a lot of kind of big business and commerce there. So there are, probably drives the average up, but I would think like between 50 and 60, you could probably, pretty similar to the average U.S.
Yeah. And so are you able to provide that for some of the staff?
Yeah. So for some of those 5, I'd say, 3 or 4 of them would be within that number.
Okay. Yeah, because that's more than the average affiliate owner reports taking home. So a lot of people think there's always more money in starting an affiliate, having mentored hundreds. We both know that that's not always the case, and a lot of times, opening up a gym, if you're not ready and prepared, can incinerate your net worth very quickly. So, a lot of people poo-poo on this idea of working for a gym owner, but in a lot of instances, you can make a lot more money than you would opening your own gym, and it's risk-free. So
yeah, I think I was just hearing about, and maybe even I think it was actually Chris's little podcast in that meta about explaining 4 ninths, and he talked about how it works, and he's like, sometimes that coach is going to go and think that they could take it all, and they go there and they end up making less than they were making when they were working for said gym before they went to open up their own.
Some of the best coaches that we hear about in the 2-brain system are failed affiliate owners, and they come back and say, "Hey, I just want to coach. I want to write the programming. I don't want to do the business stuff." Yeah. And if you have a sound business, you can create these opportunities for people like that. And
so our goal now of growing is like I don't have any. It needs to be $1 million. Like it's more how everybody else. If I could get 10, 20% more for some of those people, or bring in another full-time staff that could kind of hit that number that they want, whatever that might be, is kind of more of the goal. Getting the building, which maybe we'll get to, is just like
we're going to get there. That's going to be that's the purpose of the show.
That was kind of like my way of long-term taking care of myself. At least that's my theory. So if the gym grows, I don't need all of the profit. I could kind of share it.
And so 12,000 square feet is huge. That sounds like a massive gym space for someone like me who operated out of New York. That's just
It's like a city block.
Inconceivably large. How many members do you train out of that space? Like, what do you keep membership at?
Probably like 220 to 240.
So everybody just has their own gym. Like every single member
everybody
has a private
yes, they have their
gym.
own barbell. Not everybody has their own rope. Some people would want their own Rogue GHD, but they don't.
You got to pay extra for that.
Yeah, that's a little extra rent.
So if you would do it again, would you go as large? We've been profiling a lot of people who are having a lot of success with much smaller footprints. For sure. And we've talked to a lot of people that started in your era that have since downsized, and that's been a lot better for their mental health.
Yeah.
Like if you were redoing it, would you do the exact same thing?
No. And I guess if I kind of started with the story of like when we first started, we were in 3,200 square feet of my doctor's office in the gym. And that was 2009, 10, 11. We were about to get kicked out. So we had to find a space quickly. So there wasn't a lot around. So this was one of the few spots that was, the hard part about the gym and moving it is like the locale. I didn't want to lose a lot of people. So we moved into this space that was, almost, let's say 3.5 to 4 times the size, 2 times the rent. So from an economic standpoint, it was not a wise decision. But I was like, okay, maybe I also didn't have many decisions. So we moved in there, and when you go from the gym space at that time was a 40 by 40 square foot box, so maybe what you'd be more familiar with. So then you go into this 10,000 square feet, and you're just like tossing stuff everywhere, building walls, because it's like we're never going to run out of space.
I remember I would see the pictures on like the affiliate owners group where they would rent the space, but they couldn't afford the flooring. So there'd just be like a rig and then just like an empty warehouse, like just concrete surrounding it.
Yeah. So, so to answer your question, no, I would have moved in smaller. It just wasn't an option. And then once we moved in there, the best part about the space is the location. It's probably like from a real estate, probably like a B building from like a, light industrial, but like on an A location, on like a heavily traveled, big artery in the largest county in the state of North Carolina. So that's kind of why we stayed, and people just started kind of moving and growing in that area. So and then at that point, downsizing, we certainly could have done it, but there just wasn't a lot of available space that would have been much smaller. And even in this most recent purchase was like, there's nothing smaller. I would have bought smaller a little bit if I could have, but the only option to buy was like massive structures.
And so let's get into that, because we talked to quite a few successful gym owners. One of the most proven paths to increasing your net worth is owning your building. Like on the mentorship staff, I can think of Andrew Savard, who made I think a little over $5 million on a flip in COVID for her gym. Peter Brasov and Jared Beachco are another pair that I can think of that I think they were at they pocketed $2 to $3 million from their building, and they got a completely new gym built out for them and 2 years of free rent. Chris Cooper, if you've heard of him,
sounds familiar.
Yeah, I don't know what his is worth. He's never sell. It doesn't matter what it's worth forever, because his hold period is forever. But it's a very proven model while you're continuing to operate, especially if you're operating over a long-term time horizon like you've been. So tell me a little bit about your thought process and what you did to kind of get ready to gear up for this building.
Yeah, I think it started, I've been looking since 2016. There was a time that we bought land and we had to back out because the environmentals of and that would have been a ground up construction.
Terrible idea.
Yeah, and like, when I'm just thinking numbers, this purchase was $1.8 million. 2016 was going to be like 1.3, and I didn't have like nearly the funding for myself or the smarts to be able to take that on. So it's probably better off that it ended up, that way. So really the thing that got me pushing in this direction was I've been on the same lease since 2012 at like 3% increases, renewals. And in my last one in 2021, my landlord's like, I'd like you to sign a 5-year lease, but at the end, we got to like at some point figure out the new rental rates.
Because Charlotte's boomed, basically.
Yeah, like my rent would have been triple.
Like what are you paying, or what were you paying going into it?
I was probably paying like $4,500 on
for 13,000
square feet. Let's say, and now I'm paying maybe like 5 to 5,500. Let's say, give or take. This was a long time ago. And then now my rent was like 8,300.
And are you paying that? Like, did you form a separate entity?
No. That was rent.
Oh, so you started at 45.
Yeah.
It was 83 before you started to buy.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then in 2026, it's probably going. I know what other tenants are paying in this building, so it's probably going to be. At the end, I was probably going to be paying like $14,000 to $16,000 in rent. So when I'm looking at that 8,300 in 2021, I was like, okay, in 2026, I've got to either get out of here or buy something. And so that's kind of what started it, just like that number. So I started talking with my landlord and looking at pricing, and we started this process like the worst time to buy from like a interest standpoint. When I first started this process, I was at a 5.7 rate. We ended up buying SBA loan. The SBA hasn't closed yet, but my rate with the bank is 7. So on 1.8, that's like $1,300 more a month. Let's call it $15,000 for the year.
You could have done worse, though.
Oh, yeah. I definitely could have done worse. But either way, watching that tick up. So that was kind of the thing that made me realize that I had that 5-year horizon. So then I was like, okay, the next 2 years from 2021 to 2023, I'm just going to focus on the gym and kind of get it to continue to grow, where when I try to get this loan, maybe I could have gotten it in 2021, but I wanted to make sure like financially I had enough liquidity to be able to do it. I really didn't want to have a partner in like the purchase of the real estate for like my space, unless it was like going to be a big one. If I was able to do it myself, I was going to try to risk to do it by myself. I wasn't always like that, but like I'm in part of these groups like this, like the Tinker group that's here and some other ones, and watching some of these people do some things with money that like scare the crap out. Like, I'm usually pretty conservative, so watching some of these people like do it and not go bankrupt and like live under a bridge was like, okay, yeah. Like I'm gonna try to do this. So that was kind of the piece, was like I need to have a plan by 2026, and it just all kind of fell into place at like over this 2023 year, and then we closed in December 15th.
So, but it's your existing building,
yes.
Right?
Well, it's 4 units, right? The entire building is 38,000 square feet. They were condos, so I was trying to buy more than one, and the entire building was $5.3 million. But since it wasn't going to be owner occupied, I would have had to have raised 35%. So I tried. I talked to a couple of people, and I had a couple of people in mind that were like, maybe, and that kind of. But I didn't want to. After talking to my broker and a couple other people, I didn't want to risk losing out on like the golden goose was my space. I didn't want to risk out losing like maybe a bigger buyout, but maybe risk out somebody else coming in and buying that whole space or something. So then I tried to buy half the building, and we were pretty close to that with an investor. That fell through because of the seller maybe got a little bit greedy and found another buyer for the other unit. So then I'm like, all right, I'm starting to run out of time. I just want to get my unit and be done. So the building was condoed, and my unit I bought that 11,775 square feet. That's 31% of the entire building for that $1.8 million. Now it's 4 condos, 4 individual businesses in that building.
But you occupy
I
one
occupy
fourth of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what did you end up having to put down?
$180,000.
What? So to buy the whole thing, you had to put down 35%. So that was going to be like
1.7 million or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And then I'm assuming, were you able to get the half for the smaller SBA rate?
Yeah. So
Okay,
then originally we were going to do a conventional loan. I was going to get 10%. And then as we started moving along, and I think like just all the news with like banks tightening up lending and stuff like that, my bank, a bank that I'm switching with now, First National Bank, I think like a regional bank, they're like, hey, I've got an idea, which kind of made me a little nervous, like maybe we'll go this SBA route. And I was like, I heard it's longer, a lot of crap to deal with. And it was really very easy for me. We closed on the SBA in 11 days.
What?
This guy, so I guess there's a program in the SBA. If you're in North or South Carolina, you send John a message, he'll get it to me, since I don't go on Instagram to give you
I'll send it to Kristen.
My stuff. And then it'll get to me. I have this guy in, I guess there's a grant program for the SBA, and I paid $7,200 and like gave him all my stuff. And in like 10 days...
This sounds like these people who like message you and be like, I need personal training. I will Uber my son. I will pay 200% your rate.
I was introduced to him through the bank, so like it seemed legit. And so I paid him $7,200. They took all my personal financial statements and returns and everything that they needed that the bank already had. Took it, and they were in a rush. He really wanted to get it closed before the potential shutdown, whatever that date was, a couple of months ago. And once the SBA loan closes, the SBA will reimburse him, and then they'll send me back the $7,200 because they'll get paid from the SBA for their work. So back to that, the SBA was the First National Bank was like, hey, I have an idea, and like maybe we'll go the SBA route. This 504, it's potentially a lower rate, but you could also add in some closing costs if you want. And it could be locked in for 25 years, which like may or may not be a good idea, but it's definitely the fact that you could always change it is a little bit safer versus the bank. I think I have like a 10-year balloon or something like that.
So, gym owners, if your eyes are glazing over right now because we're going into all this technical jargon, my advice is pay attention, sharpen the pencil, because we are out here in Dallas with a group of 70-something gym owners. The conversation is where a lot of people are going. And I know sometimes if you're early on in your career or if your gym is in a great place, your mind kind of shuts off to some of this stuff. And it sounds like Brian went through a little bit of that as well, and then also some risk aversion. But like as you'll learn, you're probably a lot closer to being able to pull something like this off than you think. Because of these programs. So the SBA really is a cheat code if you want to get your hand on some real estate, especially for your gym.
Yeah, I think it gets a bad rap, and like I'm sure there's some reasons, but it certainly gives you like you said a cheat code of wanting to help, especially owner occupied buildings with the rates. And then you have like the 7A and the 504, which you don't have to get into. You kind of research that stuff. Those are just kind of the two programs. And we ended up going with the 504, which is like just real estate. It's cheaper money, pretty significant recently, cheaper money for us.
Yeah. And so I've written about both of these, and I have an interview with the head of the largest SBA lender, who Brian talked with as well. But again, as a gym owner, you're not expected to be an expert on these things. What was your first step? I know you talked to some people here and watched people do it, so you're kind of following a proven path. But if you're a gym owner, you're like, I want to own my building one day. Like, what are you advising them to do?
I think the first step is like, especially if you're like number one, I think the first step is trying to find an existing building. It's like you said, like building from the ground up has, for me, way too many unknown costs, and a lot of time. That usually takes a lot more time and a lot more money. So like finding a building or finding something would be like even another cheat code, just because you can negotiate more and you already know what you're getting. I think just kind of starting to play around with calculators, even if you just talk to your own bank, even if you don't have, you're not making enough money that you want, just go into the bank just to try to get an idea of like, how much is a $600,000 mortgage? How much is $1 million mortgage? How much is a $2 million mortgage? And just to try to get some ideas of like mortgages, taxes, and insurance, just to kind of see where you are, right? And how far away you are from some of these things. Like right now we're doing like the annual planning with all these gyms, right? And it's really good to see like, oh, I'm not as far away as I thought I was, because I only need, 36 new members this year to stay. Like 3 a month is a much easier number to kind of look at than just a bigger picture of dollars or something else. So I think just educating yourself on that. I think if you go to your like local bank and tell them what your 3-year plan is, they'll talk to you, because they can look at you as like more business to loan you the money. So I think it's just getting an idea of like where you are and what you could do, and even just getting an idea of like I wouldn't be able to own something like this in some, like if I was in New York City, right, or in some place, or maybe just getting an idea of like what your locale is to get to figure out like size and dollars, just to get started. It would be kind of the first steps.
And if your bank isn't an SBA bank, you can find one. Like there is one in your town that is, and because the difference is if you're doing a traditional loan on a space, you probably would have had to put down, what, 35%?
Yes.
Right. So on a $1.8 million building, that's probably like
too much.
550 you have to have laying around.
So for something like that, right, I would have strongly considered an investor, but like I've been doing it the whole time by myself. I don't have a problem with investors, but like I wanted to try to make it as clean and me be able to make the calls as possible.
If it's a good deal, it's a good deal, and you want to own as much of it as you can, you know, especially if it's your business operating out of it.
Right, that was the biggest reason. If it wasn't my business, I'd be more willing, but the fact is like my business was going to be like the one signing the 20 whatever long lease that the SBA requires, so it's like I want to be the one.
I could see value in if you were buying the whole space,
100%.
And you had somebody with a lot of expertise, or maybe could lease out some of the other spaces, and so there's a value add play there.
Yeah.
Like I see that, but yeah, what you did, you wanna own that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I wasn't willing to risk. Like I sat down, I was like, man, this would be really great to own this whole thing, and my landlord was willing to sell it, but I just wasn't willing to risk not getting it and something financially change in my life that I wouldn't be able to then go back to the bank and get it.
And so you went through that process. What are they, 11 days is insane. That's the fastest I've ever heard it getting done. And
it still has to close, right? But like I got my approval in 11 days, because he's like, I want to get your approval before the shutdown, because if they shut down and you already have your approval, you'll be able to close when they...
Who shuts down?
The U.S. government. It was like it was like 2 or 3 months ago, like right before they had like the government shutdown. So he's like, I'm a little nervous. I'd like to see if we get you if we could get this closed done then, because if there is a shutdown for a little bit, they're all those loans are just going to kind of back up, and I don't want you to be able to have to be delayed. So I think we close in like either. I don't really know how it works, like January 11th or March 11th, whenever they kind of package and sell these loans.
Okay. And you were, and to get ready, you had to do like personal tax returns.
Yeah, it wasn't
as statements, bank statements.
It wasn't as bad as I had imagined, right? Like my last 3 years, tax returns, a personal financial statement, and then like, every so often, just like your year-to-date profit, loss, and balance sheet. So it's like, I have a bookkeeper, and that keeps up to date. So yeah, so it's clean and easy, and I guess part of the benefit of me being pretty conservative was like it looked like a business that could take on the debt, whereas like other businesses that like funnel their entire life through the business, which is, I mean, I would do that too, but it's like you don't look as strong as you would go into the bank. So like in preparation for this since 2021, I just kind of made sure that I was a little wiser with like, it looked like I was a good lendable steward of money.
So you're not running your yacht through the business.
Right. No. My accountant said definitely not.
Okay, cool. And the Lambos are a different entity.
Yeah, for sure.
Got it. And so how's your payment change? You said you were paying about $8,400 in rent.
Yeah.
And then you were looking at a $16,000 payment or something if you would have if the lease would have expired. Yeah. So where are you now?
So I think my mortgage payment will be roughly like $11,300. And then I have the doctor's office, so I have the doctor's office that doesn't in the building, right? The doctor's office, like I have it set up to it breaks even. So that takes off some of the lease, but that's going to pay, $2,500, $3,000. And then the mortgage payment's $11,300. CAM for like the common area stuff is probably like $900. Taxes is $10,000 for the year. So like that was $900 a month. So let's call that like $10,000 for the year for common area, $10,000 for the year for taxes, and a little bit more for insurance. I'm gonna probably pay like $15,500.
So you're getting up there. You're what you would have been paying anyway. But.
Yeah. But now, right. So exactly. So I'll probably be like 10% less by that time. Maybe 5% less. But now the way that I looked at it was not so much from that cash flow perspective. Like I'll still be paying that, but now, let's say $2,500 of that's going to be like cash flow to that new entity that bought it, right? So if I'm paying 15, but my mortgage plus CAM and taxes is $12,500, right? 13 maybe. So like $2,000.
So you bought the let's take a step back so people understand. So you bought the building and created a different entity that wasn't your gym.
Correct.
And now your gym pays the entity that owns the building rent.
Correct.
And you are the owner of that entity.
Correct.
So you pocket a little bit off of that.
So like $2,000. It's still hard for me to understand, like to like wrap my head around, but I understand now. It's like essentially, I'm taking money from like my right pocket, moving it to my left pocket. It goes into this entity. So to kind of make it easy, right? Let's just say the all in was $12,000 a month, and I'm paying $15,000 in rent. That new business that purchased is going to be plus $3,000 a month. That's still mine, just like not in the gym. So the other benefit that I liked was that it's also going to be lowering like my profitable income on this side. So if I look at now, I don't need this gym for a couple of years to show that like it's making a ton of profit because I've gotten this loan now. It's going to lower. I'll be paying less taxes also, and then I have the interest on the building. So I think in the end, I'll still be greater in terms of cash flow. It just might flow out a little bit differently from like taxes and stuff.
Yeah, so what he's saying is the actual building itself, you can depreciate it over its useful life, and even though the building isn't depreciating, it's an appreciating asset. Over time, the building gets worth more. You can actually deduct that from your taxable income. So a percentage of the purchase price essentially becomes a tax shield every year.
Right. Whereas like if I was just paying that $15,000 in rent, where I'm just like, there's no interest running off, there's no appreciation. I was just losing that, and I didn't want to be there. I would have been frustrated if I was there, if I had this opportunity to be able to take it.
And what's your biggest fear? That's a big chunk of risk.
Yeah. My biggest fear is not paying it. I mean, I didn't tell a lot of people, and I publicly put it on like Facebook so people could see like this was a possibility, and I got a lot of good feedback, but like members, I didn't like share it in there like, hey guys, guess what? I just, I own this now. Because one, like that's, if they find out, they find out. But I think my biggest fear was like, it still makes me uncomfortable. The people that do know, like, how do you feel now? I was like there was times when I was talking to the broker and the banker, I was like, I almost hope you called and you were going to say, hey Brian, sorry, like we can't give you the money anymore. And it would be like, and then when I sat down at the lawyer's table, he's like, how do you feel to close? Like, how do you feel? It's like it's a little bit surreal. It's risk, but like, I feel like I take pretty calculated risks, and I'm pretty smart with my money. I feel like worst case scenario, I would sell it. Like if shit hit the fan, like what's the worst that could happen? I'd sell it and I'd start renting from whoever bought it from me, you know? But I really looked at it as like, I'm pretty terrible at looking at like visions 3 years, 10 years down the line, but I looked at it like I'm 45. When I'm 55, what can that be like? And I love the gym. I love being there, the people that I work with, the people that come in there. So I'm not like looking for it to be something else. I wanted to get something down that I felt comfortable with, that in 10 years, it's going to be, I'll look back and be like, I probably should have tried to have done it sooner.
And you probably going to kick yourself for not buying the whole thing.
Yeah, 100%. But like, but you said like the biggest, I could sleep well now with what I'm dealing with based on all I do in my math in my head is like, if we went to zero, how long can I pay for this thing? And if it was $5.3 million, and it was like, if it went to zero, I'd be like, I'm not sleeping for a while.
Not very long.
So like now, I wanted to make a purchase that I could sleep with and feel comfortable with and really be able to pay attention to like growing the gym and the business within it. But yeah, like my biggest, I don't know if weakness is the word, but like me getting comfortable is like the biggest thing that I'm kind of scared of, like being complacent. So this was probably the first time in the last, since 2020 that like, I'm not like, since 2020, like the business has been doing really, really well. And this was the next thing that I kind of needed to be like, all right, like you got to figure shit out again. Kind of like I felt in 2020 when things shut down. So I feel like I do well under stress and pressure. So I feel like this was a good test, if you may, for like me to be able to like get back a little bit uncomfortableness in my life of like pay attention.
And the business has been going for 15 years now, so I'd imagine the chance of it going to zero is probably pretty small.
Yeah, but I'd like to always think, I shared a meme that somebody posted yesterday. Is like, you're not entrepreneuring hard enough if like every month you don't feel like burning it all down or going to work at McDonald's or something. So it's like, that's true. And maybe like the logical part of my brain would be like, that's true. But I still worry about it. Not to the point that I'm like waking up at night, but when and I'm getting better at all those little problems that used to derail the gym owner. It's like one member left or this happened or that happened, but it's still a concern. And if anybody on here knows how to stop that from creeping in, message John, he'll message Kristen, and then I'll get the message.
You just make a lot more money. That's
right. Yeah. So exactly. So I feel like that's like giving the same way I said, like, how many months do I have if I can't pay this thing? It's like if I could just increase that time frame of like how many months do I have till I can't pay that thing, and it goes from 0 to 6 to 12 to 24 to a decade, then I think you start sleeping a little bit easier.
So for those unfamiliar with Brian, his risk tolerance, his box spring is actually $100 bills. So I think he's got like $300,000 cash that he rests his mattress on. So
not anymore. Because
now he only has one side of it. His wife sleeps on cash, and he's on the ground. He wants to build it back up. So I'm sure people are approaching you saying, "Hey, how do I do this?" And some of your mentees are probably talking to you about it. When is someone ready?
I think you could be ready sooner than you think if you're willing to, like, you have to figure out the price first, right? Because I wasn't going to be ready to take on this debt back then, but I have some people in some of these small areas, in some of these more affordable areas, or they've got a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot space that they want to buy. And if I had to do it all over again, the reason why I wanted to buy the building was to like lower my risk and have other people help pay the mortgage. In my case, I have the doctor's office to help offset some, but I would say, like, if you want to start looking at this, take your space and maybe look for, an extra $1,500 to $3,000, 3,000 square feet to have other units that you could rent and be the landlord to like take off some of that. There's SBA things that you kind of want to check on if you want to go that route. But I think like that's one thing to look at. And then I think just look at how much money you're bringing in, how much profit you have, and then base it on like those numbers. I wouldn't base it on like what what you think you might do, and just go to the bank. Like it doesn't hurt to go to the bank and say like, if I'm looking at getting a loan for a commercial bank, like, can I get one? And they'll say like, yeah, we'll approve you for $200,000. Okay, well I need 8, or they're like, yeah, we would approve you, and then you just got to work backwards from the math. For some people, you could pay the same, maybe minus taxes and insurance. You just have to do the math and know your numbers. That's where I think I do like some of my best work is like just the math's not going to lie to me. I'm not going to let like my emotions get the best of me or get me too excited. So I think the first step is just like going to the bank and asking them some questions and looking around at like real estate in your area and trying to figure it out. And then if the bank says no, ask them for some help, or somebody at the SBA or something that could like, what are you looking for that I'd become more lendable? And for some people, it's like your personal, right? Like if you've got like under a 650 credit score, it doesn't matter how much money your bank's making, how much money your business is making. So I think like those are things that if you know now, and you give yourself 3 years to start to fix it, that's a better option than say, man, my business is crushing it, and you go in there and you're just like not very good with your money, or you have like a bankruptcy or something on the back something bad going on there. I think just kind of starting to ask those questions, and then that's where you'll start to realize like how far away am I really? I definitely think that people are closer to it than they think. It's just taking on that added risk of that debt, and versus like if something goes wrong, I can't just like end my debt, give my landlord the finger, and say come after me for nothing. Yeah,
right. And you hear 1.8 million. Like we have people in Two-Brain who they started with like a $200,000 building, and they just kept trading up. They just they sold their car to get the down payment to buy their right. space. And so, like Brian said, if you're in New York, LA, forget about it. Like right. you need to have some cash. But for anybody who's not in a super expensive market, high cost of living area, it's a lot more doable and accessible than you think with these SBA programs.
I think the one thing that you said on a podcast in the past, it might have been the one with Angelo, which is I think good here. You said something like small business boutique gym owners have like one of the most powerful Rolodexes in their city, right? And so when it comes to that, like there's a lot of people in your gym that have money that they need to put somewhere that you are unaware of. They come across you might think it's they're average Joe, but they've got a ton of money. They need to figure out something to do. So I wouldn't be afraid. And Jeff Smith told me this in 2016. He's like, just ask people. So when originally I was going to buy that land in 2016, I had 2 members that we agreed to terms for each loaning me $125,000 to come up with 20%. But I just put out there. And I would put some caveats to it, like you'll get everybody saying, "Oh, I'd love to help you with the real estate. I've got like $7,500." And so I would give it like a minimum number if you're going to ask some people. But there's certainly people if like the down payment or some of the funding or to ask some questions of some people in your gym using that Rolodex of people in your gym could be super valuable and like a much more trustworthy group of people than just like the internet.
It's always the quiet guy in the 6 a.m. class. He's the rich one.
Right.
So if you got a quiet guy who shows up consistently to your 6 a.m. class,
driving a Corolla,
like a beat up 10-year-old RAV4, that's your guy. He's sitting on he's got the box spring of cash. And then one of the things Brian brought up that is a good point is if you go to one of these lenders and you just give them your information, they'll tell you, if you're financeable, they'll tell you, hey, you can bite off a $2 million building based off of this. And if you say, I need a $3 million, what do you need to see? And they'll literally tell you. So that's a great starting point. If you're not there yet, you can go and like Google SBA loan calculator, and you can figure out how much cash flow you need to spit off to afford a certain size mortgage. And
there's one thing that I was unaware of, and I think the mortgage is one thing, but like paying attention to your taxes is another in some of these places. I mean, I was not unaware of taxes, but when I first went in years ago, you just kind of type into that calculator, like, all right, pretty close. And then you're like, oh, insurance and taxes.
Insurance,
taxes,
CAM.
And taxes on any commercial building is going to be substantial. Insurance is going to be more substantial than you used to on a home. And then some banks also require you to pay, like my bank's requirement was 1.25% higher than my mortgage into the new company. So, for example, if for every dollar that my mortgage was worth, I need to put in $1.25 to create a buffer. I would imagine.
So that's at $15,000 versus the $2,500.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So like right. So right, exactly. So and that buffer is still to me, but I'm guessing that it gives the bank, it shows them that I'm able to kind of build up a buffer of liquidity if something goes wrong. So like those are things like just because the mortgage shows $5,000, the bank might require you to be paying $6,500 in there. So that was kind of a new one that it's still your money, but for me, it's still kind of hard to understand that like it's just moving to a different account.
Right. And another point that you brought up that I think it's worth reiterating is if you're going through the SBA, there's a couple other advantages. One is you can get up to a 25-year term on the loan. So most commercial mortgages will be for the term will be fixed for like 5 years, and then you have to refinance and refinance and refinance. With the SBA, you can lock it down for a very long period of time. The second thing worth noting is that you can buy more space than you need. So if you only, let's say Brian only needed 10,000 square feet, he could have bought the next door unit if that unit was 9,900 square feet, because your area only needs to occupy 51%. And so we've seen a lot of cases where you buy a whole thing and then someone wants to use the entire thing, and they make offers that generate more cash flow than just operating the gym. So a lot of people who we've talked to successfully, I don't think we've talked to anybody who's gone bankrupt doing this, said the most common thing we hear is, you may be the first.
I'll be back in a couple of years.
2026 Tinker Podcast. So one of the most common things we hear is, I wish I would have bought more.
Yeah, for sure.
And so,
in 2019, 2018, when I was looking, like I could have. That building was 3.5 when I first asked.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah.
It'd be $2 million. That's a much higher box spring.
And that's the reason why now it's like, you know what? I hate seeing that money leave, but knowing that it's kind of in equity somewhere else, and if everything continues as we expect, it seemed like the right time. I just didn't want to 5 more years from now not have done it. So yeah, I think buying sooner and buying more is that will come, and I could just kind of do it again. But at least I wanted to get this first piece under my belt.
Yeah. So Brian, we're running out of time. We got to go downstairs and soak in some knowledge. I would ask, where should people find you, but I know the answer. So
CrossFit.com, 2009, 10.
All you need to do is go to gymownersunited.com, join the group, make some controversial hot take, and Brian will be there. He'll be there to correct you with a slight hint of sarcasm. So just say something that Brian doesn't agree with in any affiliate owner group, and he's right there.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to be on Instagram or Twitter per my work orders.
Yeah.
So.
the bank, it's too much of a liability. It's on your insurance policy. Thanks for taking the time to do this, separating from the group for a little bit. Appreciate it. I think it's going to help a bunch of gym owners, man.
Thank you.